Welcome to the Smart Property Investment Show, the podcast by investors for investors.
G'day, how you going? It's Phil Tarrant here, host of the Smart Property Investment Show for this very special installment of Australia's leading podcast for property investors, where we are going to unveil. You might have seen it yesterday if you tuned in on the marvels of the interweb, a stream, the official announcement of the official unveil of the Fast 50 Report 2024. I hope you enjoyed that. Thanks everyone for tuning into that. There's lots happening in the world of smart property investment over the coming few months. We've got this report now, and whether you've downloaded it yet or not, I'm not too sure. You can go and find it straight off the bat, smartpropertyinvestment.com.au, the Fast 50 for 2024. These are the 50 suburbs as voted, as positioned by some of the leading property experts in Australia. They're going to offer the best capital growth in the year ahead into 2024 and beyond. It's a big body of work. We've been at it for a couple of months behind the scenes. And if you're tuning this in now, g'day on whichever streaming platform you're watching this right now, and you'll see that I've actually got some notes in front of me for once. So normally I wouldn't. Normally we speak off the cuff, but I've got a barrage of information. I've got a computer here as well. I'm not going to show it to you because it's got inside of it all the mechanics of the Fast 50 report for 2024. But today, we're going to get stuck into it. We're going to give you a sense for why we've done this report and how importantly you can use it. And you think about, why did we do this, right? Well, what is the main purpose for doing a report like this? And there's a number of different ways and reasons why we've done it. But importantly, we haven't done it by ourselves. We've done it in conjunction with our good friends over at Pure Property Investment. We're going to break this down over the course of the coming weeks, giving you insights, analysis, and interpretation of the Fast 50 for 2024 with our good friends and partners over at Pure Property Investment. Joining the studio to help me navigate this. Where do we start? Where do we end? What do we do? Is Paul Glossop. He's their CEO. He joins us in the studio live as well, so we can break this down. We're going to do 6 podcasts, Paul, over the coming one a day for 6 days, where we're going to try and give our knowledge, our insights, our thoughts, our opinions, our feelings, our sentiments, everything to do with the Fast 50. Welcome. Thanks for getting stuck in and joining us as we unveil the Fast 50 for 2024.
It's a very exciting time, mates, and I appreciate the opportunity to work with Smart Property Investment, because this is not only, as you said, probably best part of 2 months worth of work behind the scenes, but this is based on the panelists and also the data that's gone into this, and from Pure Property Investment's perspective, 10 years of experience in direct property investment, over 3,000 individual investments across 6 separate states. This is a life of work, essentially a lifetime worth work for myself and my team, and in our insights into a report that hopefully will give every one of these listeners a really good understanding as to where to put your money if you were investing property over the next 12 months to get the absolute best possible capital growth outcome.
Yeah, and that's it. Where to put your money now for growth in 2024, and that's going to shape how we unpack this particular report. But you mentioned the efforts and the work of yourself and your team, 10 years pedigree supporting Australians investing in property, and we've been very specific and deliberate about how we've gone to shape this report. And it is absolutely a unique report, and really only Smart Property Investment can do this. Myself and my team here, because we're dialed in. We're dialed into property markets in Australia, and we have no bias or agenda other than helping Australian investors make more informed decisions. So what we've been able to do is create a report like the Fast 50. Now, the Fast 50 is not a new thing. We used to do this about a decade ago. Mm-hmm. Back when it used to be in a print magazine, before podcasting became the thing. And we've been waiting in the wings for the right time to relaunch the Fast 50. And there's been a whole bunch of stuff happening in unison, which has sort of been a catalyst for us to say, okay, now it's time to get stuck back into this. And we've been speaking about the rapid rise in interest rates, 10 consecutive rises over 10 months or 11 months or whatever it was. You've got a market in flux. There's still challenges with supply chain, building costs, migration, all these COVID hangover effects, supply chain constraints still coming out of, contested areas of World War in Europe, supply chain constraints still coming out of China. So it is a complicated time, but when we last did the Fast 50, there hasn't been a rate rise. There hadn't been a rate rise. Right. There was no rate rises for how long?
Give
right?
some context
like
to
a
it all,
decade? Was it about a decade?
A decade.
No rate rises.
Basically smack on a decade.
Smack on it. So when we started investing in property, these are the first rate rises we've seen.
Yeah. And a lot of the data will essentially speak to that, is saying, well, this is what happens in 10 consecutive years of no rate rises. And, needless to say that the market hasn't moved in a linear line up, down, or sideways. But there's been some pretty specific trends that have happened in that time. And one, probably more than anything in the last year alone, which we'll unpack in this Fast 50 guide, is what happens to rents if you take just inflation into the equation. And when you take inflation that goes well beyond that 2 to 3% bandwidth into the equation, what happens to rents? And we are seeing that right now.
And so the time is right for us to relaunch this. And this is a headline. It's a headline report. This is going to be something which is going to gain a lot of traction because of its uniqueness. And you wonder, like, why have we relaunched this report? It is to the basis of where to put your money now for capital growth in 2024. It's a Fast 50 2024, and we're going to commit to be doing this annually now, and we need to be doing it annually because we need to be a pulse check for Australian investors to understand and appreciate where they should be putting their money for growth in property. Now, why do people invest in property? I know people just go, oh, I love property, so I invest in property. Yeah, I get that, but that's not why you invest in property. There's three things that people want to get, three things that people want to get out of investing in property. Number one is capital growth. Number two is cash flow. And number three is both of them. So if you've got to choose one of them, typically you've got to choose one of them. You choose yield, cash flow, or you choose capital growth. But if you're a smart investor, you try and get both, right? You try and get the best asset that's going to grow the best over the period ahead and cost you as little as possible to operate. And if anyone tries to complicate or make property more complicated than that for you, they're overcomplicating it. It's pretty easy. Where do you put your money so the asset goes up in value and it doesn't cost you too much to hold?
That's exactly it. And as you go through the methodology of this report, mate, I think you'll realize that this report isn't necessarily specifically focused just on one of those two aspects as well. There is some weighting to growth, there's some weighting to cash flow, there's some weighting to other aspects in relation to the actual asset type, in relation to the population size, in relation to a whole range of things. But to your point, mate, is that we can talk about so many of these specifics when it comes to property markets, what moves and what goes up, down, sideways in value, and what people need to consider. But the reality is you need to be quite pinpoint and accurate to say, are you buying for growth? Are you buying for cash flow? Or are you hoping to get a hybrid of the two? And this report will essentially allow you to figure out what you can get within this Fast 50.
So the Fast 50, if you tune in, I mentioned if you tuned in last night, you would have seen the official unveil by myself and Paul, where we we might touch on a bit of that in this podcast today, because this might be the first time people hear about it.
Correct.
Paul, so we've got to be conscious of that. But you can stop this podcast now and go and watch that. You get a sense for it all. But it was good to do that, and it reaffirmed to me the why of doing this and how this should serve Australian investors. It's something we enjoy doing. This is really the intersection between qualitative and quantitative data. So we've crunched the numbers, but we've also intersected that with the work of Australia's property experts, and that's what makes this unique. And Paul's obviously joined us. He's worked side by side with me in shaping this report and some of the mechanics of the report, and his team, and also the wider team here at Smart Property Investment. But Paul, we've got some of the best and brightest minds in property have contributed to this particular report, and you can read about the methodology. I don't want to go too much into it on the actual podcast, or if you're tuning on to this online. But essentially, this is the Trivago of property reports. This is the report of reports. This is where we've gone to the best and brightest minds inside of property, and we've asked them, on that basis, where should you put your money today for the best capital growth in 2024? And they've told us those suburbs. And then what we've done is that we've aggregated all those suburbs together, and we've looked for commonality of sentiment. How many people said the same place? And for us, that has a lot of currency, because every single one of these experts views the markets differently. They have their own research ethos. They have their own particular way of searching and scouring Australia for properties in those locations, right, for their customers or their clients, or if they're involved specifically inside the world of data. They all do it different. So if all these experts, if all these contributors to our panel do things differently, and a lot of them have the same outcome, we've taken that as some pretty significant clues on where to invest, Paul.
Absolutely, and I think we've talked about this a lot over the years. Is that commonality with regards to opinion is it's obviously somewhat subjective, but overlaying that with the quantitative component of this data, when you look at the caliber of the people who have contributed to this list, you've got heads of some of the biggest agencies, sales agencies in Australia. You've got heads of some of the biggest valuation companies in Australia. You've got heads of some of the larger commercial agencies in this country. You've got data experts, you've got buyer's agent, investment experts, you've got owner-occupier experts, you've got CEOs of the property investment professionals of Australia. The mix and caliber of these people and the legacy, and I dare say if we did a quick calculation of the years in industry among this
Hundreds.
list, hundreds
of years. And you can go check this out. You can download the report. Just go to smartpropertyinvestment.com.au. But I will note a couple of people, Paul. We've got Kevin Brogan, who is he's National Director over at Heron Todd White. You've got yourself, obviously, Matthew Lewison, CEO of Open Corp. You've got Lena Lindley, who's one of your buyers agents, senior buyers agents over at Pure Property. Margaret Lomas, someone that a lot of our listeners will be familiar with from My Property Match. Simon Lees from Housefinder. You've got Nicola McDougall, who's the chair of the Property Investment Professional Australia. I know you're on the board of PIPA. John McGrath, a household name, CEO and executive director over at McGrath Estate Agents. Arjun Paliwell, again, one of the very capable buyers agent in Australia from InvestorKit. You got Charlotte Pascoe, CEO of Stockdale and Lego. Simon Presley, head of research at Propertyology. Angus Rain, Paul, executive chairman of Rain and Horn. Obviously, Steve Waters, who is also a board member on PIPA. He's the director of Right Property Group. So this is the cream. This is the cream of buyers agent, property economist, and sales, residential sales professionals in Australia. And we've gone out there and we've asked them, where's the best place to put your money now for capital growth in 2024? And we've done the hard work. Well, I haven't. Our research team, headed by Michael Johnson, have done the hard work, and they've worked out, they've looked for those common trends, that commonality of those recommendations for where to invest. And we've somehow got that down to 50 suburbs, Paul. No easy task, mate.
It definitely didn't start at 50 suburbs, let's put it that way.
It didn't start at 50. It actually started at 178 suburbs.
There you go.
So we asked all these experts, saying, we just went, you tell us where to put.
No budget,
no budget, no nothing. We just went, where should you put your money now for the best capital growth in 2024? And from all those people, we got 178 suburb locations. And from that, we've been able to get it down to 50. Now, people ask, okay, how did you do that? The point being, all those 178 suburbs are good places to invest, I would imagine. That there is that investing happening. And a lot of it is based on how a lot of these experts, how a lot of these professionals service their clients. And they've got different ways of how they do stuff. So we've got to take that into consideration. So how do we actually get it into 50? What we did, we overlaid quantitative data from our friends over at CoreLogic, which we receive every single month. We update on smartpropertyinvestment.com.au on the data page. So you can go and access this information, go and have a play with it. But what we did, we said, okay, we've got to get some sense of this. Okay, they've all said these are great places. A lot of them have collectively said these are really good places. That gave us clues, and we've weighted that. The more people who voted for a location, the greater up the ranking, up the list that they've come. But how do we overlay that with data? So what we've used is 4 main metrics, which is 12-month growth. So what has happened in the last 12 months? Gross rental yield is another key factor that we've used. We've also looked at the average annual growth. So that's over 10 years. And then we've also looked at median quarterly growth. And what we've done, rather than treat all of them the same, in terms of looking for where to put your money now for capital growth. We look for clues and we've looked for ways to weight that. So we put a greater emphasis on median quarterly growth, because we've said this is an inflection point of what's happening right now. And we've always also put a significant weighting on the 12-month growth. So what has happened over the last 12 months, and it's going to give you a clue. And if you tuned into our last podcast, you would have heard myself and Paul talk about this. It's going to give you clues to see whether or not that growth is accelerating or decelerating. And then we've looked at the average annual growth. So what has been the growth over the last 10 years, and how does that compare against to the 12-month growth and the quarterly growth? Then we've also done a small overlay with gross rental yield. So just get a sense for, how tight is investment stock in these areas. So that's very much the methodology of how we put this together. You can go read about it on the report. Just go to smartpropertyinvestment.com.au for more details. But Paul, there has been a lot of work to get us into 50 suburbs, and I've enjoyed it. And we know why we're doing it right now. The key thing is, how would you be using this report?
And that is it, mate, is that this is, for a lot of people, this might end up being just another document that's downloaded, read, and put in a file or an email trail, or they print it out and it sits on a desk and they think, I should have done something about that 3 years ago. When they look at it, that's collected dust. And we've talked about this so many times over with so many markets that we've bought in and that have had their day in the sun. They've come and gone, and the two bigger things which most seasoned and successful property investors talk about is, I wish I'd done it earlier and I wish I didn't sell. They're the two main points. And I guess going back to that first one is that what people need to realize is that if you're going to go to smartpropertyinvestment.com.au to download this, which will likely take you 30 seconds to do, you can then read the report, which probably will take you anywhere between 10 minutes and 30 minutes, depending on how you're going to skim read it. And then from there, what happens after that point? The reality is, in this report, there are markets in this report that are $300,000. There are markets in this report that are north of $1 million. So the reality of, if you're going to the efforts of downloading this report, there's a very good chance that you're going to be able to do something within your budget and within your cash flow requirements.
Yeah.
The next step is up to the listener to say, what do you do?
What do you do? And hence the reason why we got a really good spread of experts who see the world differently, right? And that is, again, comes back to the uniqueness report. But Paul, you know what happens? I reckon a lot of people are going to download this, are going to get excited about it. They're going to go, oh, I've got to quickly get that and justify all my reasons why I'm going to invest in a particular location. And it's probably not going to be in there.
Yep.
I've got to admit, well over 50% of these suburbs, never heard of them before.
Yep.
Never heard of them before. And that's probably a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because that's the idea.
Exactly. And look, I've contributed to this report. Lena from who heads up my buyer's agency team at Pure Property Investment has contributed dramatically to this report. We've put probably the best part of 20 to 25 suburbs into this report that got shortlisted to probably a good handful or so that have actually made the Fast 50. There is a large amount of markets in here, not that I necessarily haven't heard of, but I've definitely never invested in, and I haven't considered investing in, and I probably won't consider investing in. And I have my own reasons, and I have those same reasons for many of our clients. But I think the reality of that is that this should open the eyes up to every one of the listeners who are going to download this report to say, this might mean that I have to pivot, and just take a moment to absorb why are they recommending that area? Let's have a look at the data. Let's have a look at the overview, and then do your own investigation, your own research, and essentially come to your own assessment. But one thing that is going to be really exciting, in addition to what we've put together in this folder, in this actual report, Phil, is that we're going to do a review of this in 12 months. And the money's going to be where the mouth is, because we're going to look at the performance of this. And if we're looking at the data correctly and we're assessing what we're looking at and we're confident in it, then for those who have had, essentially the intestinal fortitude to say, I've done something about it, what I'm really excited about is probably talking to a few people who've taken this report and potentially acted on some of this data, which may have overlaid with some of their own judgment and opinion as well, and actually review what they've achieved in that relatively short period of time. We're talking about 12 months in property is a very, very small period of time.
And that's something we will do. And once we've had time for this report to be in market, I think what we'll do is a live stream where people can ask questions live to us, and if we can answer them, we will do. If we can't, we'll get back to them. But a lot of people will read this report and they'll do nothing about it. They'll just sit there still and procrastinate around it. So don't be one of those people. Don't be like, you can sit and procrastinate around property all the time. And we're going to have a chat around how to time the market effectively. But just because a suburb isn't part of this Fast 50 report doesn't also mean it's not a good suburb to invest in.
Absolutely.
And this comes back to the point that this is a universal, collective, aggregated list of recommendations from Australia's best property people. So, to your point, a lot of the suburbs that you invest in haven't made it to the Fast 50. They've made it outside of it. They've been obviously a highly recommended property area. But again, it comes down to budget and where you are investing, your capacity to borrow. So again, universally, I think there's some very good suburbs inside of here which can suit all budgets. We'll have a chat about that on another podcast. But just because it's not the 50 doesn't mean it's not a good place to invest. And it's problematic that we've tried to get this to 50.
Yeah.
And I had this, I know and no one else knows, but I actually went through ranking these based on the criteria and the methodology that we use. So there is a number 1 to number 50, and I've chosen deliberately not to present them in this way. We've presented them in alphabetical order because it's largely irrelevant.
Yep.
Because the number 1 suburb might be outside of your budget. So It doesn't matter. So I didn't want to negatively shape people. I didn't want people saying, well, I can't buy the number 1 suburb. I've got to buy number 27. That means I'm not getting something as good. It's largely irrelevant. So I deliberately haven't ranked them in that way. But by doing that, it gives some really interesting insights to it all. There is, 178 were shortlisted onto it, which we've turned into 50. Very, very difficult. And we'll also, in another podcast, Paul, as part of this special series, we'll get into some of those that missed out.
Yeah.
Because a lot of them present very, very, very good buying. In terms also of the methodology of this, we haven't included any suburb where there was less than 50. That's correct. 50 properties sold over last year, because we felt as though the sample was not significant enough, and numbers can be skewed considerably if there isn't sufficient amount of sales, or there's certain sales, like it might be a new build area, and you see it's still creeping through some of the numbers here. Newfield greenfield site, which completely shaped the median price for a suburb versus established and new. So we're very deliberate about that to try and remove some of those areas. Acreage stock, for example, which has been a big boon recently, still not sufficient enough sales to justify including into the report. But pretty exciting stuff, mate. Pretty exciting stuff. And I'm not going to give anything away in this particular podcast. This is just really to kick off this special series of podcasts. It's going to be one a day for the next 6 days. Myself and Paul running through the report, giving you some sense for it all. But it still comes back to the point where to put your money now for the best capital growth in 2024 for the year ahead. And that's why we've shaped it. Go and download the report now, smartpropertyinvestment.com.au. It's really easy. You'll see it, press a button, and you'll be able to download it. Heaps of information. You can have a lot of fun with it, and you can start playing with the numbers inside of the suburb ranking engine also on Smart Property Investment if you want to have a look also. Paul, that's probably enough to get everyone started, I think, on this particular podcast, just giving a sense for why we're doing this, the methodology, just how unique this is, how to use the report. And also, thanks again for you and your team for partnering this. It's good to actually work with someone who we've got our particular view and lens of things, of how things work. So it's actually good to produce this in conjunction at a sort of formal level with a partner who's operating on the ground, doing what they do. Smartpropertyinvestment.com.au. Go and grab it. You'll see this everywhere. And please already start those questions coming if you have any. Editor at smartpropertyinvestment.com.au. We can get them answered. Paul, anything to sign off with?
No, not at all. I mean, we're going to dissect this in the next few podcasts, mate, which is super exciting. So I think anyone who's thinking what's next, stay tuned, because this is really going to be dissected in a really detailed way. But I think to your point, if you haven't already downloaded this guide, smartpropertyinvestment.com.au. And I think that the key part that you've pretty much alluded to in this, mate, is that don't just download it, read it, and do nothing about it.
Yeah.
If you have to talk to someone about it, if you have to hand it to someone, if you have to do something as far as get your finance sorted, whatever it might be, that's going to be a hindrance for you not taking that next step. Take that next step and make sure this is going to be that catalyst to making sure that 2023 is the time you put in place what's needed to be put in place to get the outcome for 2024, because so much of the hard work has been done in this report. Granted, there is the hardest part of all, which is actually acquiring the asset, which we'll talk about in the next few episodes. But the reality is, mate, is that this report is probably more valuable than anything else I've seen hit the property investment bandwidth market over the last 6, 12, 18 months. And I've actually personally put together a bunch of these reports over the years myself and my team. And I know how much work goes into this, and the fact that this has had a collaboration of 15 or so industry experts coupled with CoreLogic, coupled with your team at smartpropertyinvestment.com.au it's extremely valuable.
Yeah, absolutely unique. Go and check it out. And I get excited about this. I like talking about property. So check back tomorrow. There'll be another installment of this special series of podcasts on the Property Investment Podcast Network. Tell your friends. Also, this could be the thing. Remember, imperfect action trumps perfect inaction every single time.
Every single time.
90% of winning is beginning. What else we got?
We'll do a few more.
We'll do a few more. That 90% of winning is beginning is something I've stolen off a very good property person, Tom Panos, actually. But it's absolutely true.
Yeah.
Like, just don't read this and go, oh, none of my suburbs are in now. I'm not going to invest.
Yeah.
Oh, what am I going to do about it?
Or I'm going to email editor at smartpropertyinvestment.com.au because my suburb should have been in this and it's not. Well, unfortunately.
Well, some of the places I'm investing on the list, and as I mentioned, at least you're gonna hear it over the next subsequent couple of podcasts with you, because I don't even know how to pronounce some of these suburbs. I'll still get it wrong.
I'll help you.
Yeah. But the point being is that, and there's a lot of good property reports out there. I'll close on this. There's a lot of good property reports out there. You got to remember, we spoke about this last time we got together. When you get the data for this, it's already 3 months old. It's stuff that happened 3 months ago, right? So the reason why we've largely shaped this Fast 50 ranking is actually speaking to the experts. We just use data to actually help us get it to 50. We had to get that number down to 50. It's really tough graph, but you've got to get stuck into it. You've got to make sure that you do something about this information coming out. So I don't know a lot of these suburbs. The secret of property investing is investing in those suburbs. We're going to talk about it in the next podcast, investing in those suburbs that people aren't yet investing in, because the earlier you're in, the better off you are. Hence the reason why I don't know a lot of these places. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that, everyone. Remember, there's going to be 5 more podcasts coming. Check back every single day over the next period of time as we unpack with Paul Glossop from Pure Property Investment, Fast 50 Report 2024. Thanks for tuning in. smartpropertyinvestment.com.au. Go and download the report. Enjoy it. Commentary, editor at smartpropertyinvestment.com.au. We'll see you again next time. Until then, bye-bye.
The information featured in this podcast is general in nature and does not take into consideration your financial situation or individual needs and should not be relied upon. Before making any investment, insurance, tax, property or financial planning decision, you should consult a licensed professional who can advise whether your decision is appropriate for you. Guests appearing on this podcast may have a commercial relationship with the companies mentioned.